of LNG, and I like LNG. You know, LNG is a good thing. The scientists and the folks that go out there and look for these things, and they find a huge area. Apparently, we have one of the richest natural resource areas for where not just LNG, but other gases as well, that are very, very needed in the world. Sure, there's a bit of a market downturn right now. And I think if the government was honest, they were looking at prices that were rising dramatically. Now they've softened a lot and things don't look quite as good, quite as rosy. But you know, that's what happens. You pay the price when you go out there and run around saying you're going to make billions and trillions and billions of dollars. And now when the truth comes out, we're talking, well, you know, we got a bit of a chance. The window is closing, some people are talking about. And it's unbelievable what we've heard. This throne speech skipped any mention of the past election promises. And they were real promises. It wasn't just, you know, we're working towards this. What was stated was we were going to have $1 trillion economic windfall from LNG that would fill a $100 billion prosperity fund. It was going to wipe out $600 billion debt, or $60 billion debt, and create as many as 100,000 jobs. The Premier promised that LNG would not only erase the province's debt, BC Ferry's debt, BC Hydro's debt, and do away with the PST potentially forever, but now I feel that she's put British Columbians right where Petronas wants us, or how do you say it, Petronas? Petronas. She can't deliver on the LNG tax bill in the House because they're not finished working it out. And with their, I would hate to think they're our masters right now, but when you put yourself in a bargaining position where you promised the people of British Columbia the sun, moon, and the stars, and now you can't deliver because they're threatening to leave for 15 years, that's very much a problem. And now we see the government is in full retreat, Honourable Speaker. In this throne speech, they've recast it clearly. They've recast it as a chance, no longer a windfall that will help BC. And get this, now the statement is it's going to help BC maintain the same world-class services we rely on. The core services this government needs to have protected, they say in the throne speech. The throne speech also highlighted how a slow global economy and aging population has made it challenging to afford BC's current publicly funded government services. Meanwhile, we have the head of Petronas issuing public statements just hours before the throne speech warning that a proposed $11 billion LNG plant near Prince Rupert could be delayed up to 15 years. Not 5, not 10, now they're saying 15 years. Clearly, he wanted issues resolved, and that I see as bargaining through the press. It's an outrageous statement to be made when we know he has, as Vaughn Palmer put it, so much skin in the game. They've got a lot of money invested here in British Columbia, and for them to be threatening to pack their bags and leave. I remember one of our NDP leaders once said, you know, when they threaten to leave, tell them to pack their bags and get out of town, because at the end of the day, the value is still right there in the ground. They're not taking the value with them, so they shouldn't be threatening British Columbians in any way, shape, or form. From my point of view, the value is still there. Somebody is going to go after it. Somebody will see the opportunity, because they're not doing this as a social program for us, Honourable Speaker. Anybody that's under the illusion they're doing this to help us out, they're doing it for their own needs and their own profitability, and they want to take hockey socks full of value from British Columbia and run off back to their home country and empower or enrich. I mean, it's great they enrich Malaysia, But why should they be doing it on our dime? Why should they be taking bags full of cash away from British Columbia and running off around the world to spend it elsewhere? We need a fair share. You know, what this turns out to be is as close as it gets to a complete election admission of the kind of jiggery-pokery and gibberish and gobbledygook and just more smoke and mirrors, Honorable Speaker. It's hard to take this Premier at her word anymore. She knows what she wants to say, but then she does whatever she wants. She backed down on every major commitment she made around LNG. Again, devoid of jobs, devoid of the magical prosperity fund. And then they actually ran off and started telling the federal government that we need more temporary foreign workers. And I want to say about that again. I said it yesterday, I want to say it again. Why do they need to be temporary? British Columbia was built by workers from China, that worked in our railways all across this country. Why do they have to be temporary? What about the East Indian folks that have built our mills and our forest industry alongside? And I remember a day, Honorable Speaker, that I was looking through the files in the basement of our hall. And let me apologize right now for former forest industry union reps. Back in the 30s, 1937 we were formed, and I couldn't believe that I found a collective agreement that actually said on it they had a rate for the Chinese, a rate for the East Indians, and a rate for the whites. And you know what? At one point we had an investigation. There was a right there in the Union Hall. Somebody said that there was a charge of discrimination, so they had an investigation. And the report back was they investigated and they didn't find any. You know, that's the kind of jiggery-pokery. When I talk about it, I know that there was some went on in the back in the history of even our union that I'm not proud of, Honorable Speaker. It's unacceptable at any level, and it has to be called exactly what it is, and it was unacceptable then. This is unacceptable now. Free people should be fighting for free men and women to come over here. Why, Honorable Speaker, can't these workers be coming over under the umbrella of Canada? Why can't they be coming under the umbrella of British Columbia? Why do they have to be under the thumb of an employer? And I've seen it happen in my own constituency, Honorable Speaker. Imagine 4 Filipino workers, nervous and scared, arriving in British Columbia, the land of promise, the home of the free, the brave, supposedly, and that they get a job at Burger King, and their employer, who basically signed for them to be there, so they can't even go down the hall and complain. I heard about it roundabout from family members that they were being stuck they were stuck 4 to a room, Honorable Speaker, and they were being forced to pay, deducted from their pay, $500 each for rent, and the apartment was less than a $1,000 apartment. 4 of them paying the boss this kind of money, and the boss was pocketing the rest at their expense. You know, they came down and talked to us, and they were nervous. I've never seen 4 more nervous people in my life. And they said, oh, whatever you do, don't tell anybody. You can't talk about it. I can talk about it now. Burger King's gone. It went bankrupt. And so it should. Good riddance to them. That they would treat people like that. That they had the audacity to treat working people that way. And those wonderful workers would have found jobs. They could have just walked down the street to another restaurant who was hanging out a shingle and been hired. And what about it's shameful, Honorable Speaker, that right there in the Cowichan Valley, we have the highest unemployment level amongst First Nations. The largest First Nations group in British Columbia, it's something like 80% unemployment amongst the youth. They've had suicides in the Cowichan tribes. And when I asked some of the young people, why do they feel that way? They said they feel that way because they don't think it's ever going to change. They're always going to be treated second class. They're always going to be treated as that folk off the reserve. That's how they're going to be treated. And so now we've got legislation and laws, now we've got the Supreme Court saying you better pay attention. Well, we'll see. We'll see, Honorable Speaker, but when you think of decades, do you know what lands that the federal government gave our Cowichan tribes? The floodplain in the Cowichan Valley. They got the floodplain. It's just criminal that we're bringing in foreign workers, back to the foreign workers, and we've got unemployed amongst our own, no proper training program. And there are small glimmers of success and hope when somebody reaches down, Honorable Speaker, and pulls them up and says, I'm going to help out. And they can do that. There's no reason more employers. You know, I challenge the chamber in the Cowichan Valley. Step up to the plate. You got a lot to say. Well, let's hear you say something to your own chamber members and say, we want to see more, every employer in the Cowichan Valley looking at training and mentoring First Nations. Now I'd see some real action. You know, instead of this whining about whatever problem they have. Well, they pony up to the plate with their, black tie awards. Oh, that's fine. It's wonderful. It's good to have black tie awards. I went and sat there. But I got to tell you, I sure didn't feel among my people sitting there with a bunch of snobs. Anyway, at the end of the day, Honorable Speaker, go ahead, please do. You go ahead and tweet that out, because you wouldn't believe the snobbery I've seen. The snobbery. You go ahead and call a spade a spade. You wouldn't believe the letter I received from some of them clowns. Anyway, Honorable Speaker, at the end of the day, this government is quite comfortable with the temporary foreign workers being under the boss's thumb, and instead just throw them away like yesterday's news. We had all these promises, billions we were going to have, and everybody knows you don't start bargaining by telling your all the money you're going to have and all the money you're going to spend. You know, it's unbelievable, Honorable Speaker, when you think about it. Debt-free, now they're backpedaling. When I do want to talk about one of the funnier notions in my mind was the idea that when their spin doctors were spinning as fast as they could, and they were putting out their, Honorable Speaker, they were saying we're going to have all these wonderful things, trillions of dollars, billions of dollars in a prosperity fund. Why didn't they go even further? They could have had the retained earnings room down in the basement with so much overflow cash from the prosperity fund. I mean, I think the banks call it a rounding error or spillage. They could have so much cash in there that they could, for a small fee, you could go down there and they could turn on the fan and just blow the cash around. You know, they could have even come up with another one for $1,000. You could have a sleepover in the retained earnings room and throw the cash around, maybe even have breakfast brought in from the legislative dining room. And for $5,000, they could even bring in a king bed and have dinner in the retained earnings room. And I thought, overnight I was thinking, you know, really the Liberals, if they really believed all of this stuff, they should have gone the next step and talked about a cruise line, where the Princess Prosperity, they could have called it. Their maiden ship could have been the Princess Prosperity, and they could have all kinds of fun with the retained earnings, making money for the people of British Columbia. But now you think about what's happening, they're backing away from doing anything about emissions here in British Columbia. They're pretending that burning more natural gas won't have a real effect on climate change here in British Columbia. The throne speech promises a comprehensive legislative framework, but now we're going to see how the big gas industry has plucked the Premier's golden goose. Will we be down to just the guts and feathers?
Thank you, member.
I certainly hope not, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, member.
Thank you.